Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. I've just finished uploading part 1 of the video pertaining to the mixing. I had titled that video, The Javelin, Seed Mixing, Marrying Strange Women/Wives. I have put up the part 1. I had thought I downloaded or uploaded the part 2. There was some difficulties with that, so I'm redoing it, so you should have part 2 of that video up. That way you understand clearly what our instructions are pertaining to mixing with other nations. Now, on this video, the title of this video is Adultery, Sexual Matters. The title of this video is entitled Adultery, Sexual Matters. Now, for this lesson, first of all, tighten up your jaws. Don't turn your face to the left or to the right. We're to walk the straight and narrow way of the Most High's commandments. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. If you seek the truth, you will bump smack into the Most High's law. Now, we will turn to Leviticus chapter 20. We will stay in chapter 20. And this lesson will only be Leviticus chapter 20. Many of us have heard of adultery, accuse others of it, have no idea what it means and what it is. So what we will see is in this lesson we'll have a clear understanding of how we are to conduct ourselves sexually, and to understand clearly what being promiscuous, what are the punishments for that. All right. Once again, we will start off with Leviticus chapter 20. Leviticus chapter 20, and the lesson is adultery, sexual matters. All right, let's start at verse 1 of Leviticus chapter 20. And verse 1 reads, And Yah spake unto Moses, saying, Again, thou shalt say to the children of Israel, Whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn in Israel, that giveth any of his seed unto Molech, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. So we were instructed, and so were the strangers that sojourn with us, that if any of us gave our children up to be sacrificed unto any devil, i.e. an idol, that's what devils are. Devils are idols, false gods of these nations, that those of us who put our children up, that we will be put to death. That would be akin to today's christening, today's baptism. Be the same thing. You put your child up for these sort of things. This was a punishment punishable by death when you honor and paid homage and paid obedience to idols of the nations that we dwelled in, or the nations that were around us. Verse 3, And I will set my face against that man, and will cut him off from among his people, because he hath given of his seed unto Molech, to defile my sanctuary and to profane my holy name. So any man that gave his son up to any deity, that man was cut off from the Most High. The Most High cut him off. The Most High set his face against him. Verse 4, And if the people of the land do any ways hide their eyes from that man, or from the man, when he giveth his seed unto Molech, and kill him not, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and will cut him off, and all that go a-whoring after him, to commit whoredom with Molech, from among their people. So the Most High says, any man that gives his child up to a deity to be sacrificed, back in these days, or today's modern day example would your child being christened, or your child being taken up to be baptized to the pagan idol of Christianity, of these strangers that's among us. Most High said, I'm going to kill that man, you're going to cut him off. And if the house of Israel refused to carry out that judgment upon him, he was going to carry out that judgment upon those who didn't do it. Because if you didn't do it, then you're simply standing against, or you are against the Most High's judgments, and we were not to do this. So all those who went a whoring after that man or walked in his way, so to speak, the Most High was going to cut them off. Verse 6, and the soul that turneth after such, and have familiar spirits are wizards, witch doctors, obeah man, what else you call them? Yeah, witch doctors, soothsayers, okay? Verse 6 once again, and the soul that turneth after such as have familiar spirits, and after wizards, to go whoring after them, I will even set my face against that soul, and will cut him off from among his people. In Africa, in the Caribbean, in South America, in Central and Latin America, the witch doctor is a busy man, because our people down in Brazil, in Argentina, throughout the Caribbean, the West Indies, etc., they are quick to do some obeah, some voodoo, some kind of craziness pertaining to familiar spirits. These witch doctors, we are not to do this. And anyone that turns to these individuals, the Most High says he will cut them off from his people. So I want you to understand that you're not to do this. This is wicked. This is sinful. You're not to do it. Verse 7, sanctify yourselves therefore, and be ye holy, for I, Yah, your strong one, am holy. We are a holy people. He is holy. We are to be holy. And the only way we're going to be holy is we must walk after his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, and not disobey them. Verse 8, and ye shall keep my statutes and do them. I am Yah, which sanctify you. Verse 9, for everyone that curseth his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. He hath caused his father or his mother, he hath cursed his father or his mother, his blood shall be upon him, punishable by death. You're not to curse your mother or your father. Take heed to that. Verse 10, and the man that committeth adultery, verse 10, and the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. Now, what is adultery? Adultery is when a man, whether he is married or not, lies down with a woman that is married or is betrothed. Betrothed means she is engaged to be married. She has a husband. It may not officially be on paper. So, if a man that is married lies down with a woman that is not married, it is not adultery. Let me say that again. If a man that is married lies down with a single woman who is not married and she's not betrothed, she's not engaged, this is not adultery. However, once that man who is not married lies down with that woman, or that man that is married, when he lies down with a woman that is not married, though it is not adultery, the moment that he lays down with that woman sexually, she is his wife, and he is responsible unto her for all of her days. So that you understand that. So adultery is not just when, okay, a married man lies down with a woman. Okay, fine. Is she married? Because if that woman is married, then they have both committed adultery. So if a woman is married, if she lies down with a man that is single, she have committed adultery, and so has he. And the punishment for that is death. So this one man, one woman concept that is presented in the New Testament is a lie. You cannot go back here in too many places and find where our forefathers only had one wife. We had many wives. And in the latter days, 7 women will take a hold of one man, petitioning to be his wife. So we will return back to the way things were in the days of old, having more than one wife. But at the same time, like I said, once you lie down with that woman, she is your wife. You are responsible unto her like you are your first wife. And whatever you give the first wife, you are to give the second. So this is not promiscuous behavior where you can just go around laying down with all types of women and not having any bond or responsibility to them. That would be whoredom, and that is not allowed. It is sinful, okay? And it is not to be done. So now you understand clearly what adultery is. Adultery is when a man, married or not, lies down with a married woman. If a woman that is married lies down with a man, single or not, that is adultery. Verse 11. And the man that lieth with his father's wife has uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. A man that discovered his father's nakedness. Any man that lies down with his father's wife shall be put to death. You have uncovered your father's nakedness. If you do it with your mother, you have uncovered your father's nakedness. That is a sin. If you do it with your stepmother, same thing. You have uncovered your father's nakedness. It ought not to be done. It is a sinful thing, and it walks contrary to the Most High's law. So you understand clearly you're not to lay down with your mother. You're not to lay down with your stepmother. And if you have done this thing, you have walked egregiously against the Most High's law. Now, verse 12. And if a man lie with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall surely be put to death. They have wrought confusion. Their blood shall be upon them. So, you have some men in the house of Israel who finds it slick, who may want to relive their younger days and may want to lay down and have lied down with their sons' wives. I want you to consider how foul that is and where your mindset would have to be to do this. So, if you are that man of Israel who have actually laid down with your son's wife, you have done an egregious thing against the Most High's law, and it is punishable by death. So you understand that. Now, verse 13. If a man also lie with mankind, as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. What this means is, if a man lies with mankind as he does with a woman, if two males lay down in the bed together for any sexual activity, it is an abomination unto the Most High. It is disgusting behavior. That's what you know as homosexuality. Now, they're pushing this gay agenda across the earth. This is contradictory to the Most High's law. This is punishable by death. It is an egregious sin. Verse 14. And if a man take a wife and her mother, it is wickedness. They shall be burnt with fire, both he and they, that there be no wickedness among you. So, if a man take a wife and her mother, some of you are so disgusting in the house of Israel that you want to lay down with a woman, and then you're going to try to lay down with a mother too. And you go tell your boys and brag on this thing and think that you've made a great achievement. You've sinned against your own soul is what you have done. And you have sinned against the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. This is wickedness. And it ought not to be done. Verse 15. And if a man lie with a beast, he shall surely be put to death, and ye shall slay the beast. Some men are laying down with us. Saw in Atlanta where this young brother was caught laying down with a dog. The woman left her dog in his care, and the neighbors recorded this young man, a young Israelite, having sex with one of her dogs. This is disgusting behavior. It is a sin, both he and that dog, to be put to death. That's the judgment for such behavior. Verse 16. And if a woman approach unto any beast, and lie down thereto, thou shalt kill the woman and the beast. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. This is known as bestiality. If a man or a woman shall lay down with any animal, they are both to be put to death. It is disgusting behavior, and it walks contrary to the Most High's law. Verse 17, and if a man shall take his sister, his father's daughter, or his mother's daughter, and see her nakedness, he used to have sex with her in any way, shape, or form, and she see his nakedness, she used to have sex with him in any shape or form. It is a wicked thing, and they shall be cut off in the sight of their people. He hath uncovered his sister's nakedness, he shall bear his sin. You're not to lie down with your sister. It doesn't matter if it is your father's daughter or your mother's daughter. You are not to lie down with your sister in any shape, in any way, shape, or form. You are not to do this. Verse 18, and if a man shall lie with a woman having her sickness, and shall uncover her nakedness, he has discovered her fountain, and she hath uncovered the fountain of her blood, and both of them shall be cut off from among their people. When a woman is on her menstrual cycle, you're not to touch her in any way, shape, or form sexually. That is to uncover her nakedness and to uncover her fountain of her blood. You are not to do this. And if you are a female, once you are on your menstrual cycle, you are not to deal with your husband or your mate in any way, shape, or form sexually. It is against the Most High's law. Verse 19, and thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy mother's sister, nor of thy father's sister, for he uncovereth his near kin, they shall bear their iniquity. Now, verse 19 reads, to uncover the nakedness of thy mother's sister. Your mother's sister is your aunt. Your father's sister is your aunt. You are not to have sex with your mother's sister or your father's sister. She is your aunt. This is a sin. You're not to do this. You're not to even consider this. Verse 20, and if a man shall lie with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness. They shall bear their sin. They shall die childless. You are not to lay down with your uncle's wife. So you understand that clearly. Verse 21, and if a man shall take his brother's wife, it is an unclean thing. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They shall be childless. A man is not to go lay down with his brother's wife. It's against the Most High's law. The only time that is done is in the case of the duty to a husband's brother. When one of them dies and he has no child, and the one that's living goes on to the spouse of the deceased brother and bring forth a child to be raised up in the name of the deceased. That's the only time that that's allowed. Now, verse 22, ye shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my judgments and do them, that the land whither I bring you to dwell therein spew you not out. The land of Israel, the land was programmed to spew us out, to kick us out, to give us the boot. So if we were to do any manner of foulness, if we were to walk contrary to this law in any way, shape, or form, the land was going to spew us out. It was going to kick us out. And as you know, you are receiving this broadcast from the many lands of our captivity. We do not control any laws pertaining to us. We do not make the laws. All the laws are made by our enemies, and we are punished by them. And there are laws specifically against us. So it is clear that we are not in our land. We do not govern our laws. We do not make our own laws. So therefore, we know clearly that we have walked contrary to this instruction, and for that we have been spewed out and cast to the four corners of the earth. Now, verse 23, and ye shall not walk in the manners of the nation which I cast out before you, for they committed all these things, and therefore I abhorred them. The Most High hated these 7 nations that dwelt in the land of Canaan, because they were doing all of these things. That's why we were instructed never to walk after the manner of the nations, not just these Canaanites. That's anywhere we go, because no other nation knows the Most High or his laws. So if we're to walk after what any other nation is doing, well, clearly we'll be walking outside the law, statutes, judgments, and precepts that the Most High gave us. So we're not to walk after their ways. We're not to marry their daughters. We're certainly not to follow after their idols. Verse 24, but I have said unto you, ye shall inherit their land, and I will give it unto you to possess it, a land that floweth with milk and honey. I am Yah your strong one, which have separated you from other people. Once again, separated from other people. We are set apart from other people. We are above everyone else. We are not as everyone else. And this everybody soup that they teach you in the New Testament is rubbish. Now, verse 25, ye shall therefore put a difference between clean beast and unclean, and between clean fowls and clean. And ye shall not make your souls abominable by beast, or by fowl, or by any manner of living thing that creepeth upon the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. We have a dietary law. The Most High has made clear unto us what it is clean for us to eat and what is unclean for us to eat, what's abominable meat. So, if you let the Christians tell it, and those who walk after their enemies, there's no law. You eat what you want to eat and do what you want to do. The Most High is making it clear unto us that we are to make a difference between clean beast and unclean, clean fowls and unclean fowls. We're not to make our souls, our body, abominable by eating unclean things that he has deemed unclean for us. We could sell it to him. You can go outside and kill a wild boar and go sell it to a man of the other nation. Perfectly fine. You better not eat it. Now, verse 26, and ye shall be holy unto me. If you're going to be holy, you're going to have to walk in these laws. For I am holy, and have severed, separated, cut out, set apart. I have severed you from other people. We are not them. We could never be them. They are not us. They could never be us. That ye should be mine. We solely belong to the Most High. Notice the Most High said that we should be his, mine, singular. He didn't say I've separated you. I've severed you from everyone else so you could be ours. That Trinity nonsense. One, mine. So we belong solely to the Most High. And we're not to allow anyone to tell us we can eat what we want. And that's why you're so sick and have all these problems. Because you want to eat what your enemies are eating. You want to eat what the nations among you are eating and have encouraged you to eat. And you pay the price for it. Verse 27. A man also or woman that have a familiar spirit, or that is a wizard, shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones. Their blood shall be upon them. That concludes Leviticus chapter 20. Adultery, sexual matters. We know clearly we're not to lay down with the sister of our wives. We're not to lay down with our father's wife. We're not to lay down with our uncle's wife. We're not to lay down with any woman that is married, period. Should we lay down with a woman that is not married, the time we lay down with that woman or lie down with her, she is our wife. And we are to be responsible for her all her days. That way there's no whoredom in the house of Israel. Because when the land falls to whoredom, we get the boot. We get spewed out. So in case you were not clear on what adultery is, you should now have a clear understanding of what it is. If you ever felt homosexuality was okay, and that is something that you can embrace, now that's negative. You have just heard this law, And I will trust that the minute you clicked on this video, your book was wide open and you were attentive to everything that was said because you were reading along. Therefore, you can say, I know, have knowledge of, not I believe. You want to have knowledge of it. Okay, you want to understand it. You want to read it and study it. That way, when the question is asked to you, as you start telling anyone about this, you can open this book and point to them clearly so they can see it. And anyone that has any contention with this word, you must understand clearly that they have a contention with the Most High. All right, so you understand clearly now that pertaining to sexual matters, your wife is on her period, you're not to have any kind of sex with her at all. I don't care what type it is. She is unclean. You're not to do it. You understand clearly you're not to lie down with another man's wife at all. So that concludes this lesson. Adultery, sexual matters. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Do not sin against your own soul by walking contrary to the Most High's law. In doing so, once you take part in any manner of wickedness that's contrary to the Most High's law, you're going to pay for it. Your children are going to pay for it. And Israel, the whole nation, pays for it. I want you to understand that when one of us screw up, all of us pay. Go through this law and read it carefully and watch when the house of Israel did anything contrary to the instructions that they were given. The Most High sent a plague upon the whole congregation. Back in the old days at my job, we would sit at lunch and eat. Myself and many other Israelites sitting at the same table. And the news would be on the big screen. Once we saw a story pertaining to a man that have killed several people, normally they don't show who did it. They just tell you, a man has committed a crime by killing XYZ amount of people. And we're looking at each other like, oh boy, I hope that's not one of us. By just looking at each other, we know exactly what we're thinking. And then one of us is always brave enough to say, hey man, boy, tell me that wasn't one of us that did that. Because we clearly understand that once that happens and it's one of us that have done it, it stigmatizes our people, and most importantly, it stigmatizes our men. Okay, we wear that. When one of us do something crazy, we all pay, as in the days of old. So we are to be mindful of our actions, because the consequence of our actions, not only will that individual pay and feel the heat, but so will his children, so will his household, and so will the entire house of Israel. So we are to be cautious of the Most High's law. We are to do it, and we should understand that once we rebel against this law, the consequences goes beyond our person. So we are to be responsible to ourselves, to our household, and to the entire congregation of the house of Israel scattered to the four corners of the earth. So whenever you do something, it doesn't just affect you. And if we're to think in this manner and walk in this law, we will surely be brought out of this captivity and be placed back to the head of all nations, where we are to be from the onset. All right. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Peace, Israel, and Yah bless.